Hello. Well, the situation seems to be getting worse and ramping up in the Ukraine. Yeah, I still call it the Ukraine occasionally. In Ukraine. And a lot of people are very worried. If you ask me, it won't get to nuclear war, although I have to say the Americans are talking in that way, and I'm going to get onto that in a minute. Simply because the Russians are too sensible for that, but it could get to very bad effects for the Ukrainians. And I want to talk about the American part in all of this. Now, I'm not saying the Americans were responsible in entirety for the situation that's happening now, but the EU was certainly responsible as well, but for a different reason and in a different way. So I'm setting the EU onto one side for the time being, and I'm just going to talk to the American effect. And in order to do that, I am going to make reference to a novel by Mary Shelley called Frankenstein. Now, Frankenstein isn't just the horror story that most cinematic versions concentrate on. It has its horror aspects, of course, but it's become a classic because it talks about a repeating pattern in human history. And that repeating pattern is our tendency to create monsters from bits of dead bodies, or, as in the present case, from the dead and past years of our history. Look, we all do it. It's astonishing how every one of us collects bits of past events and put them together to make horrendous mockeries of reality. And these mockeries get out of control from time to time as well. Now, I want to look at the monster the West, and again, I'm sorry to say, principally the USA, has made of Russia. Russia of late was a struggling country trying to recreate itself after 70 years of the ravages of a very incompetent, cruel economic and social theory. I'm not saying that Russia is an innocent party in this, but I am saying that Putin used to be a realist, a pragmatist in many ways, who would probably have accommodated he did accommodate some political setups that he didn't like particularly much. But from 2016, but it was from before 2016. But with increasing urgency from 2016 onwards, the Democratic Party in particular, and its progressive adherents, have been holding Russia up as the skeleton in the cupboard, the monster under the bed, the murderer behind the tree, the snake in the grass. Well, I'm sure you get the idea. If you didn't like Trump, he was a Russian asset. Yeah, if you didn't get as much interest on your investments, it was because of Russia skewing the bank rates or the money markets or something. If you didn't like the election result, it was because of Russian interference. Every night on MSNBC and CBS, so far as I could tell from what I've seen of it on the internet, and every day in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and at any time possible on daytime television or from any of the Democratic politicians, it was Russia, Russia, Russia. This was a useful tool to be used for political edge, but you know what? It wasn't only the American public watching this. The Russians were watching it too. Now, I was watching it as well, and I have to tell you that I was sitting in front of my screen with, I suppose, a look on my face of just awestruck incredulity. I don't know what I looked like, but it must have been something like that. I don't know. How could anyone believe that stuff? It's total rubbish. But it carried on and on and on, and Trump was ousted. And now he was ousted, maybe not with the same number of votes that are supposed to have ousted him, but certainly he was ousted. And it turns out that the Americans had elected a man, or probably his puppeteers and some cabal behind him and his speechwriters, who blamed Russia for absolutely everything that was wrong in the world. Now, obviously, the Russians knew that they weren't responsible for everything that was wrong in the world, but they must have been made increasingly aware that this was the story that the Amerikanskis believed. And so when NATO, which is dominated by America, started pushing ever further east towards the Russian borders, of course the Russians are going to get more and more uncomfortable about that. So the ether is at present full of pundits saying that Putin has some mental illness or even a physical illness, that he's paranoid, that he has a God complex or something. I'm not speaking for Putin. He's probably all of those things. He's a nasty man who has poisoned political rivals, even those in exile. But I venture to suggest his high command is not paranoid, and he couldn't have convinced them that action was necessary in the Ukrainian case unless he could also convince them that the world was getting ready to encircle and strangle Russia, which they regarded as a monster, because they were convinced Russia is responsible for all the failing internal political affairs that have befallen them. After all, look, if you have a gun and you see a large, frightful monster looming out of the darkness towards you, even if that monster actually meant no harm, if you're frightened enough, you're going to shoot, aren't you? Russia, 50 times a night on American TV and in the media, and so Russia it is. Created at least partially by all the bits of neuroses in the American mind. Russia has become the monster American created out of its own mental corpses. And you can't blame Russia to a certain extent for thinking that this can only end badly if America ends up on its doorstep. And, well, anyway, yeah, that's my take on the situation. You might do well to reread Frankenstein. It's a salutary tale. Okay, I am Grannyopteryx. I am on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Minds. As at Grannyopteryx, I am on Twitter, Gab, and Parler, and I always let you know through those platforms when I've uploaded a new video. Please remember to like this video, make sure you're subscribing and share it, and support my channel if you can. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Grannyopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.grannyopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.